Hello, welcome to another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. Okay, so as you can see, since you last saw the greenhouse, what I've done is I've put up some staging in the greenhouse, as you can see on each side. Now these are the trays from the other greenhouse. What I'm basically doing is I'm going to be using this greenhouse to start with this year, and then what I can do then is empty the other greenhouse out, clean it all out, because I had a little bit of blight in there last year, as you know. So what I want to do is completely strip everything out of there, give it a really good clean down, and then hopefully that will that'll prevent me getting blight this year. So basically what I've done is I've managed to get hold of a couple of these frames. As you can see, that's sitting on the slabs at the edges. I've got a bit of wood here just to kind of prop this one up, because this one's slightly shorter than that one. But these won't stay in here all year round. What I'm planning to do, ultimately they will stay in here, and you can understand why now. I'll put these slabs at the edges so I can sit the feet of these on. But basically what I've done is I've put these in, I've sort of screwed them all together, they just bolt together here, and for now I've just cable tied them to the frame of the greenhouse, just so they're nice and sturdy, so they don't move about, because potentially what you could do is break the glass in the greenhouse. So on this side I've just got a hard surface, which is sort of MDF. I know MDF's not really the ideal material to go into a greenhouse, because obviously it'll sort of absorb the water, but for now it's going to serve me as a reasonably good work surface to sort of pot stuff up and that. And then on this side here I've got these standard grills, which basically will be where the sort of the plants are. So that's where we are with the greenhouse at the moment. Obviously nothing else has changed really, it's all exactly as it was before, except for the fact we put these in here. And what I've done is I've put on the floor here, I've put two slabs to form a path up until this point here, and then what I've done is I've gone round and I've dug, before I put the surfaces in, I've been round and I've dug all the ground over, got out any weeds or anything like that. And what I'll do, obviously, before I plant anything in here, what I'll be doing is obviously digging it over again, putting loads of compost in and stuff like that, and enriching the soil, and then and then I'll be planting stuff in. Obviously at that point in time all of these surfaces will come out, but what I'm hoping to do is to keep the framework in here. Obviously these sort of trays will sort of come out, and this surface will come out, but I'm hoping to keep these frames in here all year round. I mean, for nothing else, I mean, I can tie the tomato canes and everything to these frames, and I can also sort of potentially have a shelf at this end, for example, where I can have some plants growing here as well, sort of smaller pepper plants and stuff like that. So it's actually advantageous for me to keep these in the greenhouse as kind of staging. And then what I'll do is I'll just take out these. It gives me the option of taking these out, planting in the bottom and having larger sort of plants like tomatoes, etc. Or I can put these trays back in between the plants, or at one end or wherever, and then I can sort of grow smaller plants in there, like a like a shelf. Obviously this side as well, this surface will most certainly come out. One of these trays could potentially go over here to form like a shelf at the back, but ultimately I'll have tomatoes, peppers growing in the bottom here, and then also on the top here and here potentially I'll have some smaller pepper plants, the ones that just grow kind of a foot or two high, because there'll be plenty of headroom there for the plants to grow. So that's basically what the second greenhouse looks like at the moment. Okay, so as you can see outside, it's another miserable day today. It's been raining non-stop. I don't know if you can see. and the allotment's absolutely saturated with rain, so there's not really much I can do outside at the moment. So what I thought I'd do is get on with some jobs in the greenhouse. So what I'll start to do now is just show you some of the seeds that I've bought over the past couple of weeks. Okay, so as you know, in this greenhouse I'm going to be growing some more peppers. Now I did show you some a couple of weeks ago, let me just quickly find them, of peppers that I'm going to be growing, and what I've actually done is I've bought some more peppers. There is somewhere, here we go, with the tomatoes. So far I've got, hang on, those two and that one. So I've got some jalapenos. Quickly, I showed you these the other week. I've also got these Mohawk F1 peppers as well, from the Thomas & Morgan range. I've also got from Irwin Organic hot jalapenos, which is basically the same as the other ones. Now obviously there are a number of sort of jalapeno type chilies sort of out there. Obviously a jalapeno is a jalapeno, but there are sort of various sort of varieties of the same kind of thing. Right, okay, we've got this sweet Bonetta pepper as well, which I showed you the week. But what I've managed to get this in the last week is I've got some mixed variety peppers. Now these are the sweet peppers, like, you know, the sort of the larger peppers. I've got those which can be actually sown around now, but I've actually looked on the inside and they need to be between 18 and 21, so we haven't quite got that temperature up the garden. But what I could potentially do is sow those now and take them down to the house into a pot, in a pot. Now there aren't so many seeds in here, and I did actually have a look. Oh, there's actually 100 seeds in there. I thought there was less than that. So I could potentially grow those in a small pot in the house to germinate them, and then bring them up and pot them up. But I am planning to grow lots of peppers this year. So those are the sweet peppers I've got, and I also got these large red Marconi sweet peppers, which are basically the larger ones. These are quite common in Turkey and places like that. I've seen these quite often. Also in Italy as well, I've seen these. But they can also be sown in February. Now these are from the King Seed range, as you can see. Now I get these from the Allotment Society that I belong to. So you know, for 80p really you can't go wrong really. So those are the peppers. So I'll be growing all of those different types of peppers, and they're going to be going in the very near future. Okay, so that's the peppers. What I've also got is my full type of parsnip. Now, as I explained before, I typically grow 4 different types of parsnip. I've got these Hallow Crown, Gladiator F1, and I've got this Student. The 4th type I normally grow is Albion, but I couldn't find any Albion with the Allotment Society, so what I'm going to do is try this variety here, which is Tender and True. Not grown this one before, so I thought I'd have a go at this. Now what I do, just so you can, just so you know what I'm doing, what I do is I sow all 4 seeds down the same row. So what I'll do is I'll typically put 2 rows of parsnips in. What I'll do is I'll make the drill to put the seeds in. I'll go up with one type of seeds and put a seed every, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches up the row. Then I'll go back with another type of seeds and put seeds on top of those seeds, if you like. And I'll do that 4 times. So I'll have 4 varieties in the same row. And then depending on weather conditions and stuff like that, some will germinate, some won't, because parsnips are always difficult to germinate. And what I find is that's the best way to get success, by putting different varieties in the same row. Then at least one of the varieties will sort of take and germinate, and away you go. So that's the way I do parsnip. So anyway, that's the full type of parsnip that I'm going to grow this year. So I shan't be growing Albion this year. Right, okay, tomatoes. What I explained is I always grow 3 or 4 different types of tomatoes. I always grow Gardener's Delight, I always grow Moneymaker, and I always grow Alicante, or at least I have done for the past 3 or 4 years. So those are my staple tomatoes. Gardener's Delight, Moneymaker, that's most certainly the one I recommend, Moneymaker, and Alicante, which is a type which is very similar to Moneymaker. What I'm going to grow this year is this variety here, which is Golden Sunshine. It's a heavy cropping yellow tomato. Of reading the back of the seed packet, it sounds very similar to Alicante and Moneymaker. It's that sort of size tomato, and it crops quite early as well. It's cropping from June and July. So you know, by the look of it, these are, you know, sort of very similar to Moneymaker and Alicante, and these are from the Mr. Fothergill range of seeds. So I thought I'd give those a go this year. So I'll be putting those in. Now these can be sown now. Again, you need a sort of 15 to 20 degree greenhouse to do that. So really, you need either to plant them and germinate them in the house if you've got a conservatory or something like that. That's ideal. Or if you've got a heated greenhouse. I've got neither of those two things, so I basically need to have these in the house. But I will be sowing these in the next month or so. So that's the last type of tomato that I'll be growing this year. So that's basically the complete set of seeds now. In addition to that, Richard Sydenham sent me some kale seeds a few years back, and I've been growing those for the past 3 years. And I've been trying to find those same seeds in the UK. The closest I've been able to get, I've had to send off online to this company here, Nicky's Nursery Limited. I don't know if you can see that. Nicky's Nursery Limited, and they're in Kent. I've got in touch with these over the internet. So if you go to Nicky, hang on, which way is it? I'll put the internet address across the bottom so you can see it. But basically what I've done is I've bought these kale seeds. These are Collard's Champion. I've bought a couple of packets of these. Fortunately, there's not a picture on there that you can actually see what the seeds are like. But they're pretty much like the Scottish kale and the Parish kale that I've been growing. These grow around, I think it's about 2 foot high, 60 centimetres between the rows. So I'm guessing they're kind of, I don't know, 3 or 4 foot high possibly. On the picture that I saw, they looked around, you know, sort of 3 foot high, but on here it doesn't actually state how high they get. But anyway, those will be the kale seeds that I'd be planting now. Most certainly, a lot of the brassica seeds you can grow early. Brassica seeds typically will germinate in reasonably low temperatures. So, you know, it says here, well, it says here so thinly in late spring. Obviously, we're nowhere near that yet. But if you look at some of the other brassicas, like these, for example, I think you'll find that yeah, you can sow these in February, March to May, February. So, you know, a lot of these varieties of brassica you can actually sow kind of now, because they will sort of germinate in quite low temperatures. Just see if it says on here what kind of temperatures you need to germinate. No, it doesn't state. So that tells you that, you know, you don't need temperatures too high really. But so I will be putting in some of the brassicas before too much longer. Get them started off. And obviously, as you know, the broad bean plant didn't come up, and as you know, I've seen reasonable amount of comments and that on the channel about people thinking it's actually a mouse. I think they're probably right. So what I'm going to do now is plant the broad beans again. Broad beans can be planted any time between sort of September, October time, right up until March really. So I'm going to put these in to the same pots as I started with the others, and get these going. So I've got a reasonable number of broad bean plants to go forward with. Okay, so it's this time of the year really you need to start putting out your potatoes to chitting. Now all you need to do is ideally have some sort of egg trays like this. Now I've had these same egg trays now for probably about 10 years. You know, if you look after them, they will sort of last. But if you haven't got egg trays, just a seed tray will do. Just as long as you're sitting the potatoes up and they can't rock about too much, they'll be fine. But all these basically do is just keep the potato upright, so that they can actually start to chit. Now what you want to do is bring out your potatoes now from the dark and get them into the light, otherwise the chits will grow, you know, sort of far too long and they won't. So really what you want is you want potatoes roughly that size or smaller. You don't want to put anything really sort of that big. And basically what you want to do is put them positioned so that you've got obviously there's another little chit there, another little one there. Now as you're putting them in the ground, you will potentially knock some of the chits off, because you don't. Ideally, I think on each potato, I think you need three, sort of 3 chits. Any more than that, you'll get lots of small potatoes. Any fewer than that, you'll get few very large potatoes. So depending on what sort of potatoes you want to grow, if you want to grow, and obviously dependent on the variety as well. If you want to grow lots of sort of large potatoes, then the best thing to do is just have a few chits on each of your potatoes, your seed potatoes. If you want to grow just a few large ones, just leave a few chits on. If you want to grow lots of small ones, then just leave all the chits on. Or if you want to grow sort of reasonable sized potatoes, sort of average sized potatoes, then I recommend 3 is probably the best to leave on. So, but at this point, whilst you're letting them grow, what I suggest is don't take any off yet. Take them off later on when they've grown to kind of 1 inch or so you can pick the best ones on the potato basically. So what I've got in here, these are kestrel potatoes, and I always save my own seed potatoes. I don't buy them. Over the last couple of years, what I have been doing is I have been buying some seed potatoes and putting them in to make a comparison. Now last year I had kestrel potatoes that I'd saved from the year before, so I'd saved my own seed exactly like I'm doing now. I also bought 2 bags of kestrel again, and I grew 1 bought row, 1 saved row, 1 bought one, and there's basically no difference between them at all. So I know this is going to be quite controversial because I've had comments on the channel before, but I don't believe you need to buy seed potatoes. I think you can save them exactly the way I have. So what I'm looking for here is any potato kind of that big. If there's any sort of disease on it or anything like that, the sort of suspect, just discard it basically. This one here I've discarded because there seems to be a slug hole in it. That one there's got white, I don't know if you can see, but the actual chits are white. So that's actually a Maris Piper potato, which you've got in here by accident. Now, all the questions that I've had in the past is, sort of what's the ideal size for a seed potato? Right. The best thing that I can say is it's not the seed potato that grows, it's the chits that grow. Obviously, to start with, the chits come from the potato, but as soon as the potato's in the ground and these start to form roots, the size of the potato really is inconsequential. You can have a seed potato which is the size of a baking potato. You can also have a sort of potato which is like sort of quite small. For example, let's find one in here that's got a chit on it. That's a normal sized one. Hang on. Like for example, this one here. That one there. That's got 3 or 4 chits on it. There's no reason why I can't put that in the ground and it'll grow away quite nicely. So that's probably about as small as I'd go, to be honest with you. On average, you want them to be about kind of that size. Just a bit bigger than a golf ball. That's the sort of ideal size to have a potato. I've also had comments as well, if you've got potatoes that have grown near the surface and they've gone a little bit green, can you also use those? I would recommend you steer away from using them, but there's no reason, I don't believe. And obviously if anybody's got any comments, I'd be very happy to hear your opinion as well, but I don't believe that there's a concern by using them. Now obviously kestrel have these like purple sort of chits on them, so that's how I'm telling the difference between kestrel, which is obviously this one is, and obviously Maris Piper got white ones like that. So all I'm doing is, as you can see, there's quite a variety of size potatoes here. Now there's no reason why as well. I think that's most piper. There's no reason why you can't put 2 potatoes in the same hole. For example, if you've got a small potato like that, or this one here, and it's just got 1 or possibly 2 chits on it, there's no reason why you can't put both of those in the same hole when you plant them and just let them grow together. But you haven't got to have 3 chits on a single potato. You can put multiple potatoes in. But all I'm doing here is just going through, picking out the ones that have got chits on that are a reasonable size. Obviously, if you've got any that are showing any kind of disease or anything like that. For example, I've got some here. It looks like I either put the fork through that or a rat's had a nibble at it. Or for example, that one there, I've clearly put the fork through that one. And then obviously this one here is obviously diseased. Anything that's got any canker on it like that, just discard those, put those on the compost heap, or even put them in the recycling bin. What you want to put in the ground is a nice healthy looking potato, and then there's no reason why you can't sort of save your own seed. And obviously seed potatoes aren't reasonably expensive to buy. I mean, I grow sort of 12 rows in the allotment, and if I was to buy seed potatoes for all of those, I'm probably talking sort of £20–30 worth of seed potatoes, which obviously is to be avoided if possible. I think that's a most piper. Now you do get the odd potato that hasn't got any eyes on it at all for some reason. So obviously what you want are the ones that have got multiple, and then basically just put them in the egg tray so they're facing up. So as you can see, that one there's got a hole in it. So obviously get rid of that one. So all I'm going to do is I've got multiple buckets of potatoes that have got these little sort of seed potatoes. That's definitely Maris piper. You can tell because the chits are white. That's a kestrel. So all I'm going to do is just put them all out on the tray. As you can see, you end up with quite a mixed bag of potatoes. There's no sort of fixed size to them. That's a nice Maris piper. So as you can see, that's another Maris piper. I'm not really going to grow Maris pipers. They didn't really grow that well. And I think what you need to do with sort of potato varieties, to be honest with you, is find what variety works best in your ground. I've grown lots of different types of potatoes in the allotment. I've grown, sort of King, all the sort of classic common ones like King Edwards, and I've grown Maris piper. I typically grow, sort of white potatoes that are kind of floury, as opposed to sort of waxy potatoes. But what you need to do is, if it's your first year on your allotment, what I suggest you do is you grow 1 or 2 rows of each variety and find out which ones did the best, and also which potatoes you like. I mean, I like kestrel because they're reasonably slug resistant, so I don't get too much slug damage on them. Where I've grown other varieties in my allotment and I've had loads and loads of damage caused by slugs, where the kestrel sort of came out reasonably unscathed. They're a nice potato. They're a nice, good sized potato. They're a white floury type potato, which gives you the ability to sort of mash them, bake them. They also, even though I don't make chips, they also cook quite nicely for chips as well. And you can, and that's typically what I use potatoes for, either mashed, roasted, or baked. And these are a good all-round potato, which will give you all of that. If you want a more sort of waxy potato, obviously you need to look at different varieties. The waxy potatoes are typically the sort of the more early varieties. Kestrel's actually classed as a second early, but I actually grow it as a main crop. In other words, I plant it around sort of April time. I'll plant them in the ground, and then I'll harvest them. Probably starting, basically I'll wait for the tops to die off, flower and die off, and then as soon as they die down to the ground, I will then start digging them up, which is typically around kind of September time. So I grow them as a main crop, even though they are actually classed as a late early, if you like. But anyway, that's kettle. So what I'm going to do now is put them all out on these trays. What you want to do is keep them in the light. They don't need to be overly warm. The reason you want them in the light is you want these chits to grow nice and strong, but not particularly quickly. If you leave them in the dark, what will happen is these will grow quite quickly, because obviously they're searching for the light, and they'll grow quite weak, and they're very prone to snapping off at the potato. Now, just to quickly reiterate, it's not the potato that grows, it's the chits that grow. So you can literally plant a peeling. If it's got a chit on it, it will grow into potatoes, and that's what they used to do in the war and stuff like that. They used to, if you'd got a potato like that, for example, what they'd do is they'd cut that top piece of the potato off there, plant that, and then they'd eat the rest of the potato. So there's no reason why you can't do that. There's also another, there's no reason to say, if you've got a large potato like that with chits at each end, there's no reason why you can't cut that in half, put one half in one position and the other half in the other position. Sort of do it that way as well. So always remember, it's not the potato that grows, it's the chit that grows. So the size of the potato is, as soon as you go it in the ground, is largely inconsequential. Obviously, when you're chitting them, obviously it's the starch out of the actual potato itself which is forming the chit. So obviously, it's important before it goes into the ground. But as soon as it goes into the ground and it can generate its own starch and stuff, it will just grow, and then it'll sort of generate the stalk and sort of grow away. And there's no reason why I can't think that I could put that potato in there and then this one next to it, and those two plants won't be identical as soon as they sort of get to the top of the ground and start growing. And I would expect a similar crop from those two potatoes if they've got the same number of chits on them. So it's always worthwhile bearing that in mind. And to be honest with you, you're much better off having a sort of reasonable sized potato like that with some nice healthy chits on it than a great big potato with with not so healthy chits on it. It's all about these little shoots at the side which we call chits. That's where the plant will form from. The actual potato itself, it doesn't matter really how big it is, within reason. Okay, so there are all the potatoes. So all of these, so basically one tray will basically do a row in the allotment, because I basically put something like 14 to 15 seed potatoes in a row. So obviously there's sort of 30 in a tray. So each one of these trays will do 2 rows. So that's also 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 rows. And then these last 2 trays here will be the shop bought seed potatoes. I'm only going to grow Kestrel this year. As I say, last year I did grow a number of varieties. I grew Kestrel, I think I grew 11 rows of Kestrel. I also did some of the purple majestic potatoes, which grew okay, but they were more of a novelty than anything. And I also grew a row of Maris Piper, which didn't suit my ground too well. I wanted to try it again. I did grow Maris Piper about 10 years ago. But I just wanted to try it again to see if they were any better. But again, the Maris Piper didn't grow too well, but I don't think the potatoes did overly well last year anyway. But so those are basically the seed potatoes I'm going to be putting in. As you can see, there's sort of variety of sizes. Obviously I've got some that are sort of that big, right the way down to sort of smaller ones of that big. So anything in there, as long as you've got chits on them, they'll grow. And then so I'll be putting another 2 trays worth in there. So I'm going to end up with 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 rows worth of potatoes. And as I'm putting them in, I'll probably reject some of them. So what I always try to do is always put out an additional tray to what you actually need. And then if there's any that have got any problems or I'm not too sure about the potato, I shall put that on the ground. I'll reject it and obviously put the healthiest ones, or the ones that have chitted the best, in the ground. So that's the potatoes for now. Obviously I'll be putting those in the ground in probably a couple of months' time. But if you've got space in your greenhouse, now's the time to get your potatoes out, get them in the light, get the chits growing, and then we can be putting those in the ground in the next couple of months. So, I hope this episode has been of some use to you. Please don't hesitate to put any comments or questions you got below, and I'll always get back to you. And I'll see you on the next episode of Jim's on the Garden.